My name is Ryan Mitchell. I'm 34 years old, a civil engineer living in Austin, Texas. I've been in this business for 12 years, and one thing people will always tell you about me is this. I'm careful. I think twice before speaking once. I observe. I analyze. That mindset has always been my shield, both at work and in life. And yet, even shields have cracks. I met Emily Eiley Thompson 5 years ago at a mutual friend's birthday party. She worked as a marketing coordinator at a tech company. And when I say she had a smile that made me forget my own name, I'm not exaggerating. She was smart, ambitious, and when she spoke about her career plans, there was this fire in her eyes I couldn't look away from. Those first few months were perfect, maybe even too perfect. Everything flowed naturally. 8 months later, Emily moved into my house, a 3-bedroom property I had bought 2 years earlier as an investment. I never even hesitated to make space for her. It wasn't just my house anymore. It became our home. Last December, under the Festival of Lights at Zilker Park, I got down on one knee and asked her to marry me. The ring, a 2-carat diamond, had cost me 4 months of my salary. She cried, said yes, and before we'd even called our parents, she was already posting it all over social media. For her, the world needed to see it instantly. For me, it was just about us. The wedding was set for September. Everything was perfect, or at least it seemed that way. Because sometimes the strongest structures collapse, not from what you can see, but from cracks you never noticed until it's too late. Emily, she always needed validation. Compliments, attention, being the center of the conversation. At first, I thought it was charming. She shined. I admired. It worked. But 3 months ago, things began to change. She was on her phone more often, always screen side down. Nights out with work friends became more frequent, and her excuses became more vague. Just dinner with Sarah, but then Sarah would be at home, posting photos with her husband. Office happy hour, she'd say on Fridays, but she'd come home smelling of men's cologne that wasn't mine. Individually, maybe coincidences, but together, a pattern I couldn't ignore. Still, I didn't confront her. That's not who I am. I observe. I wait. That's how I avoid mistakes. But sometimes, waiting doesn't prevent the pain, it just delays it. And then came Saturday, March 15th. I remember the date perfectly. I was in my home office, reviewing some documents, when I heard a soft knock on the door. Emily walked in, her face carrying that look I'd seen before. The same expression she wore when she had to tell me something I wouldn't want to hear. "Ryan," she said quietly, "we need to talk." I closed my laptop slowly, my heart already bracing itself. "Sure," I answered. "What's up?" She sat down across from me, in the armchair by my desk. But she wouldn't meet my eyes. She stared at the floor, twisting her hands together, and then finally whispered, I need some time to think." The words echoed in the room like a thunderclap. "Time to think about what?" I asked. "About us. About my feelings. About who I am. 5 years of love. An engagement. A future we had been planning brick by brick, and suddenly she wanted time to think. At that moment, I realized cracks don't appear overnight. They're there all along. You just don't see them until everything starts to fall apart. "Do you want to break up?" I asked her directly. "No." The answer came too quickly, too desperately. "It's not that," she said, fumbling for words. I just need a break. Time to understand what I really want." Right then, I knew. My instincts, the same instincts that made me question every inconsistency, screamed at me. There was more to this conversation than what she was giving me. There were missing pieces, variables left unaccounted for. "How long?" I asked calmly, keeping my face neutral. "I don't know, a few weeks, maybe a month." And during this break, I said slowly, "Do you plan to?" Emily finally looked me in the eye. "Be alone. Reflect." It was a lie, a poorly constructed one at that. But I didn't call her out. I just nodded, because I was already calculating my next move. That night, Emily packed a couple of bags and left for a friend's apartment. She promised she'd call in a few days. I carried her bags to the car, kissed her forehead, and watched her drive away. When I walked back inside, I sat down on the couch, the same couch where we had spent 1,000 nights together watching Netflix. And for the first time in months, I smiled. Not out of happiness, but out of clarity. like an engineer staring at blueprints and finally identifying the flaw in the structure. Emily wanted time to think. Fine. I was going to use that same time to think too, to plan, to prepare, because deep down, I already knew what the truth was. My instincts had never failed me before. Life teaches you this. When something starts to crack, you have two options: try to fix it, or let it collapse and move on. And some structures simply aren't worth repairing. The first 3 days after Emily left were strange. The silence felt heavy at first. No, how was your day? When I came back from work. No laughter drifting in from the kitchen. No presence in the bed beside me. But in that silence, there was something liberating. For the first time in years, I could think without interference, without background noise. By Wednesday, the engineer in me couldn't sit idle anymore. I began my own quiet investigation. I'm not the type to stalk social media obsessively. But Emily had left behind a trail, a digital footprint she didn't expect me to follow. One of those footprints was her iPad, the same one we used to watch movies together. She'd forgotten to log out. Curiosity? Or intuition? Maybe both. But I unlocked it. The first few photos on Instagram looked harmless. Brunches, coffee selfies, random sunsets. But patterns always reveal themselves if you look closely enough. And soon, I began to see the cracks forming into something undeniable. Tea first. Everything looked normal. Selfies with friends. Quick stories about work. A few photos of us together that she hadn't bothered to archive. But as I scrolled back, one detail caught my attention. 3 weeks before our break conversation, Emily had posted a picture from a downtown coffee shop, a place I didn't recognize. She was smiling in the photo, but the framing was strange, cropped in a way that suggested someone else had been sitting right next to her. Someone she didn't want me to see. That was the first crack. I switched to Facebook. Same pattern, but here, her privacy settings were a little looser. I noticed comments from names I didn't recognize. Male profiles, liking her posts, dropping inside jokes. One name kept appearing over and over. Marcus Chun. The name pulled me back instantly. I remembered it well. Marcus Chun, the ex-boyfriend she had told me about at the start of our relationship. The man who, according to Emily, had shattered her heart by cheating with a co-worker before ghosting her. The great betrayal that supposedly taught her how to trust again. Now, 3 years later, he was back. From what I could piece together, Marcus had recently moved back to Austin, worked at a flashy app development startup. Single, successful, and judging by the interactions, he and Emily had rekindled something about a month before she asked me for space. By Friday night, suspicion turned into confirmation. My phone buzzed at 8 p.m. James, my best friend since college, was calling. "Ryan, man, I don't know if I should tell you this," he said carefully. "Go ahead," I replied, already bracing for impact. "I saw Emily today, on Rainy Street." For context, Rainy Street isn't where you go to reflect. It's Austin's most romantic bar district. Candle-lit patios, acoustic music, cocktails designed for dates. She wasn't alone, James continued. She was with an Asian guy. Short hair, blue dress shirt. They looked pretty intimate. My chest tightened. "Did you get any pictures?" I asked, keeping my voice steady, almost clinical. James hesitated. I thought it was stalkerish, but yeah, sending it now. 2 minutes later, the photo arrived. Emily, laughing, hand resting lightly on the arm of a man who was unmistakably Marcus Chun. Their faces close, their body language leaving no doubt. It wasn't two old friends catching up. It wasn't innocent. It was betrayal, captured in a single frame. That wasn't a casual conversation between exes. The photo James sent me was evidence, undeniable and raw. The kind of evidence that doesn't leave room for excuses or second chances. Emily's hand resting on Marcus's arm, the way she tilted her head toward him, the laughter frozen mid-frame. It was the body language of intimacy, not friendship. The moment I saved that photo, something inside me shifted. The man who had been patient, forgiving, willing to give her the benefit of the doubt, disappeared. What remained was someone else, someone colder, sharper. I stopped feeling. I started planning. The first step was documentation. In my world, projects live or die based on the strength of their records. Without documentation, nothing is provable. nothing is real. So I became my own archivist. Screenshots of Instagram interactions, every flirty comment from Marcus, every like that carried too much meaning. I pulled their Facebook conversations into neatly labeled folders. James's photo went into another file, along with timestamps and location details. Even Emily's vague text messages about needing space became exhibits in my growing case. If she ever tried to twist the narrative to paint herself as the victim, I would be ready. There would be no denials, no gaslighting. The truth was now preserved. The second step was asset protection. I wasn't just protecting my pride, I was protecting my future. The house we lived in had always been mine. Purchased years before Emily even knew my name. The deed carried no trace of her existence. Still, I refused to rely on assumptions. On Monday morning, I sat in my lawyer Mark Peterson's office, listening as he read through the paperwork. His voice was steady, clinical. Ryan, under Texas law, she has no claim. You're not married. There's no common law marriage, and the property was acquired well before your relationship. You're safe. I left his office not with relief, but with certainty. She could take her lies, but she couldn't take my home. The third step was asset appraisal. 5 years together had filled the house with things that felt like ours. Furniture chosen on weekends, appliances we debated over in store aisles, artwork Emily swore brought warmth to the walls. But when I laid the receipts out on the table, a different story emerged. 80% of it had been purchased with my money. My salary, my bank transfers, my credit cards. Emily had contributed more in ideas and aesthetic choices than in actual payments. I had never minded before. I earned more, and I never pushed for strict fairness. But now, the numbers meant everything. What she had dressed up as partnership had, in reality, been mostly mine all along. While I was busy building my case, Emily kept her distance. No calls, no unexpected visits, no heartfelt attempts to explain herself. Just one dry message on Monday night. How are you? Hope you're well. Still thinking about everything. Kisses. Kisses. 5 years of love, plans, and engagement boiled down to a single vague line and a digital kiss. I stared at the message for a long time. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, tempted to unleash everything I knew, everything I had discovered. But then the cold, methodical part of me took control again. She didn't deserve my anger. Not yet. She deserved silence. So I typed back only 2 words. I'm good. And then I put my phone down. For the first time in months, I felt no anxiety, no second-guessing, no ache to reach out. What I felt instead was clarity. She thought she was buying time to figure herself out. What she didn't realize was that every day of her silence was giving me more time too. Time to plan, time to prepare, and time to decide exactly how this story would end. Good. Taking my time, too. Talk when you feel ready. That's what I texted her back, but the words were nothing more than camouflage. Inside, I was already ready. Ready to know the full scope of her betrayal. Ready to shield myself from whatever damage she thought she could cause. And above all, ready for a conversation that would be very different from the one Emily naively believed we would someday have when she came crawling back. On the Wednesday of the second week, fate handed me another piece of the puzzle, this time without me even asking. Sarah, one of Emily's oldest friends, someone I had always respected for her honesty, reached out through Instagram. Her message was short, urgent, almost guilty in tone. Ryan, I can't keep quiet anymore. Emily isn't in my apartment like she told you. She's at a downtown hotel with him. With him, Marcus Chun. Of course, the so-called break wasn't about reflection, healing, or clarity. It was nothing more than a premature honeymoon with her ex-boyfriend. Emily wasn't weighing our relationship, wasn't searching for answers in solitude. She was simply testing whether the grass was greener on the other side. And all the while, she kept our house as her insurance policy, her safety net, her plan B if Marcus didn't measure up. That night, I stopped playing defense. I made a decision that shifted everything. I wasn't going to wait for Emily to come back. I wasn't going to stand still, waiting for betrayal to bloom into confession. I was going to act. I dialed a number I hadn't used in years, David Rodriguez, the real estate agent who had helped me buy my house 3 years ago. He answered on the second ring, cheerful as always. David, I need to sell my property fast. A pause. Then his professional voice kicked in. Any problem, Ryan? Change of plans, I said flatly. How long would it take to put on the market with Austin's current climate? With a house like yours? 2 weeks to find a serious buyer, maybe another 3 to close. Perfect, I replied. My tone was calm, but inside I felt the gears of something larger begin to turn. Ryan, David pressed gently. Can I ask why the rush? I let my eyes drift around the living room as I held the phone to my ear. The paintings Emily had insisted on buying, the couch where we had spent countless nights watching movies, the dining table where we had planned a wedding that now meant nothing. These weren't tokens of a life shared. They were relics of a lie. Because sometimes, I said quietly, you realize a house is just a house, and houses can be sold. David chuckled, not sensing the darker undertone in my words. Got it. I'll have the paperwork ready. The sign goes up tomorrow. I hung up the phone and allowed myself the first genuine smile in weeks. Emily wanted time to think. Perfect. I was going to use that time too, but my thoughts had a precise destination. A life without her. A future built on my own terms, free from the poison she had brought into my world. The for sale sign went up Thursday morning. Clean, discreet, professional. A silent declaration of war she didn't even know had begun. The price, $485,000. $15,000 below market value. Yes, but still a healthy profit over what I had paid 3 years earlier. It wasn't about squeezing every last dollar. It was about speed, efficiency, and control. By Saturday, the first interested buyers arrived. A young couple. He a serviceman from Bergstrom Air Force Base, she a nurse. They walked through each room with quiet admiration, their hands brushing as they pointed out details to one another. I could see in their faces the same kind of fondness Emily and I had once worn when we first chose furniture together. The irony wasn't lost on me. It's a beautiful house, the wife said softly, almost reverently. Are you moving to something bigger? Her question lingered in the air, heavier than she intended. I could feel the weight of the answer in my chest, but the truth wasn't something I owed them. I smiled politely. Something like that. Inside I thought, no, I'm moving to something better, something cleaner, something free, change of plans in life. That was all I wrote back. No explanations, no details. They didn't need any. By Sunday, the offer came in, $475,000. Cash, pre-approved financing, no contingencies. Clean, efficient. David called me like a man who just won the lottery. Ryan, this is unreal. 2 weeks, you'll be closed. I rarely see deals move this smoothly. I gave him a polite "that's great," but didn't mirror his excitement. Inside, I wasn't celebrating. I was calculating. Every day felt like a countdown to freedom. Meanwhile, Emily kept playing her game. A text every 3 days, always vague, always non-committal. Hi, how are you? Still sorting out my thoughts. Hope you're doing well. Need a few more days. My replies matched her tone, distant, neutral. But privately, my life was running on a military schedule. Precise. Efficient. No improvisation. I began dividing everything we owned. 5 years of living together turns into an inventory problem if you're disciplined enough. Luckily, I was. Anything I paid for, backed by receipts, stayed with me. Anything she bought, I boxed up. Joint purchases, I broke down into value versus utility. The 65-inch Black Friday TV? Mine. Receipt dated November 2022. The leather couch? A gray zone? Her choice, my money. My name on the receipt sealed it. Kitchenware, washing machine, even the rugs, all accounted for, documented. My obsession with paperwork had finally justified itself. I scheduled movers for Friday, donations for the same day. By Monday, handover day, the house would be a clean slate. That Thursday, however, the schedule received an unscripted visitor. A black Tesla Model S pulled into the driveway. The kind of car chosen by someone who wanted to announce their success without saying a word. Marcus Chun stepped out. Crisp suit. Confident smile. The walk of a man who thought he was walking into a victory lap. You must be Ryan, he said, extending his hand. Marcus. Emily's friend. Friend. The word tasted sour. I shook his hand anyway. Cold curiosity outweighed hostility. "Come in," I said. He stepped inside, scanning the place like an appraiser. His eyes lingered on the furniture, the art, the structure. He nodded. "Nice house. Emily always said you two built a beautiful home together." "We did," I corrected. "I paid. She decorated." He gave a nervous laugh, sat down on the couch she had chosen, as if he had a right to occupy it. "Look, Ryan, I know this is complicated, but none of this was planned. I came back to Austin, ran into Emily, and 5 years of my life suddenly weighed less than a few nights at the Driscoll Hotel." I cut in. Marcus froze. "How old are you?" I leaned forward, voice steady, unflinching. "Free advice. Marcus, when you're lying about something not being planned, don't leave your credit card trail at the most expensive hotel in Austin. Makes guessing too easy." The silence that followed was delicious. His eyes flickered, the way people do when they realize they've been outmaneuvered. That was all the confirmation I needed. He straightened up, trying to recover. "Listen, Emily's confused. She doesn't want to hurt you. She can't ignore what she feels for me. Maybe it's better if you both talk and reach some kind of amicable agreement." "Amicable agreement?" I repeated, turning the words over slowly, like tasting a cheap wine. "You mean me quietly walking away from a 5-year engagement so you can have her without guilt?" He nodded, hesitant. "Something like that." I stood, walked to the window. Outside, the for sale sign caught the sunlight, its message loud and undeniable. I pointed toward it without looking back at him. "Marcus," I said calmly, "can I ask you a question? Does Emily know you came here?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. Marcus shifted in his seat. "No, I thought it'd be better, man to man. Just us." "I see." I tilted my head. "And did she tell you she's staying at the hotel with you? Or did she sell you the same story she gave me? That she's at a friend's house, reflecting on life?" Silence. His eyes flickered for just a second, but that was enough. In silence, people confess the most. "Ryan, look," he began. "No need to explain." I cut him off, my tone sharper now. "I already see the dynamic. She lies to me about where she is. You lie to her about coming here. The two of you building a relationship on omissions and half-truths. Interesting foundation for a romance, don't you think?" Marcus stood abruptly, his polished confidence slipping at the edges. I just wanted to avoid unnecessary drama. "Drama?" I repeated, walking slowly to the door. I pulled it open, holding it wide. "Marcus, there won't be any drama. You can relax." He stepped through, but before leaving, he turned back with a last attempt at moral high ground. "Emily really cares about you, Ryan. She's just following her heart." "Of course she is," I said smoothly. "That's exactly what she was doing 5 years ago when her heart decided I was the one. And now, when her heart tells her it's you, you're thrilled. But when her heart changes again, and it will, I'm sure you'll understand perfectly." Marcus had no comeback. He walked to the Tesla in silence, the glossy machine swallowing him whole as he drove away. I closed the door behind him and laughed. Actually laughed for the first time in weeks. The next day, Emily messaged me. "Hi, love. I think I'm ready to talk. Can it be this weekend? Love." After 2 weeks holed up in a hotel with her ex, she still signed off with love. I replied, "Sure. Sunday at 3 p.m. at our house." Our house. Technically, yes, for another 48 hours. When I hung up the phone, I scanned the hollowed-out rooms. Boxes stacked like barricades. Furniture under white sheets like bodies covered at a crime scene. Bare walls still scarred from where her paintings once hung. The stage was set. Emily wanted a conversation. She'd get one she'd never forget. Sunday, 2:30 p.m. The house echoed with silence as I waited in the empty living room. Then I heard the crunch of tires in the driveway. Earlier than expected, typical Emily. She always showed up early when her nerves got the better of her. I glanced through the window. She was alone, sitting in her car, adjusting her makeup in the rearview mirror, practicing her face, rehearsing her lines. The performance was about to begin. Her keys still worked. She didn't even need me to open the door. I heard the familiar sound of her heels crossing the entryway, followed by hesitation, silence as she noticed the hollow echoes. "Ryan," Her voice called out, uncertain, bouncing off bare walls. In the living room, I answered evenly. Emily appeared in the doorway and froze. The once cozy space was stripped bare, emptied of every memory. Nothing remained except two folding beach chairs I'd borrowed from a neighbor, an intentional stage set. Her mouth opened slightly. What happened here? Have a seat, I said, gesturing toward one of the chairs. Let's talk. She lowered herself slowly, still scanning the barren walls like she'd stepped into the wrong house. Her hair was down, soft waves framing the same face I used to wake up next to. She wore the blue blouse I'd bought her last Christmas. The irony wasn't lost on me. Ryan, where are our things? She stammered. Oh, that. I reached into my jacket and pulled out a plain envelope. Your things are all here. I handed it across. Inside, a storage unit key and a neatly typed 3-page inventory. I rented you a self-storage unit on Riverside. 6 months prepaid. Everything that could reasonably be called yours is packed, labeled, and waiting for you. She slid the papers out, skimming the list with trembling hands. But what about the rest? Our furniture, our TV, Emily. I cut in, voice calm but sharp. Can I ask you one question? During these 2.5 weeks of reflection, where exactly were you staying? She blinked. At Sarah's house. I told you that. Line number 1, I said evenly. Sarah messaged me last week. You weren't there. Want to try again? Her cheeks flushed crimson. Ryan, I leaned forward slightly. Let me help you out. Driscoll Hotel. Executive Suite. Booked under Marcus Chen's name. Roughly $350 a night, not counting the room service and spa charges. Should I continue? Her lips parted, but no sound came. The silence lasted almost a full minute before she whispered, barely audible. How did you find out? Emily, we didn't ask for a break to reflect, I said, voice measured, surgical. You wanted to see if the grass was greener. You used our house as your safety net while you experimented with a luxury honeymoon with your ex. Tears welled in her eyes, spilling down her cheeks. It wasn't like that. I really was confused. Confused, I repeated. Confused enough that you couldn't spend even one night alone. Confused enough to lie about where you were. Confused enough to let Marcus show up here last Thursday and try to negotiate our relationship with me. Her head snapped up, eyes wide. He did what? Oh, you didn't know? I almost smiled. Your boyfriend came to see me. Very noble, really. He suggested I amicably let you go to avoid unnecessary drama. A gentleman's proposal. I let the words hang in the air before adding, romantic, don't you think? Her keys still worked. She didn't even need me to open the door. I heard the familiar sound of her heels crossing the entryway, followed by hesitation, silence as she noticed the hollow echoes. Ryan, her voice called out, uncertain, bouncing off bare walls. In the living room, I answered evenly. Emily appeared in the doorway and froze. The once cozy space was stripped bare, emptied of every memory. Nothing remained except two folding beach chairs I'd borrowed from the neighbor, an intentional stage set. Her mouth opened slightly. What happened here? Have a seat, I said, gesturing toward one of the chairs. Let's talk. She lowered herself slowly, still scanning the barren walls like she'd stepped into the wrong house. Her hair was down, soft waves framing the same face I used to wake up next to. She wore the blue blouse I'd bought her last Christmas. The irony wasn't lost on me. Ryan, where are our things? She stammered. Oh, that. I reached into my jacket and pulled out a plain envelope. Your things are all here. I handed it across. Inside, a storage unit key and a neatly typed 3-page inventory. I rented you a self-storage unit on Riverside. 6 months prepaid. Everything that could reasonably be called yours is packed, labeled, and waiting for you. She slid the papers out, skimming the list with trembling hands. But what about the rest? Our furniture, our TV, Emily. I cut in, voice calm but sharp. Can I ask you one question? During these 2.5 weeks of reflection, where exactly were you staying? She blinked. At Sarah's house. I told you that. Line number 1, I said evenly. Sarah messaged me last week. You weren't there. Want to try again? Her cheeks flushed crimson. Ryan, I leaned forward slightly. Let me help you out. Driscoll Hotel. Executive Suite. Booked under Marcus Chen's name. Roughly $350 a night, not counting the room service and spa charges. Should I continue? Her lips parted, but no sound came. The silence lasted almost a full minute before she whispered, barely audible. How did you find out? Emily, you didn't ask for a break to reflect, I said, voice measured, surgical. You wanted to see if the grass was greener. You used our house as your safety net while you experimented with a luxury honeymoon with your ex. Tears welled in her eyes, spilling down her cheeks. It wasn't like that. I really was confused. Confused, I repeated. Confused enough that you couldn't spend even one night alone. Confused enough to lie about where you were. Confused enough to let Marcus show up here last Thursday and try to negotiate our relationship with me. Her head snapped up, eyes wide. He did what? Oh, you didn't know? I almost smiled. Your boyfriend came to see me. Very noble, really. He suggested I amicably let you go to avoid unnecessary drama. A gentleman's proposal. I let the words hang in the air before adding, romantic, don't you think? Her keys still worked. She stepped inside without hesitation, heels clicking across the entryway. Then she stopped. The sound bounced strangely off the walls. No rugs, no furniture, just emptiness. Ryan. Her voice trembled as it echoed down the hallway. In the living room, I answered. She appeared in the doorway and froze. The place that had once been a warm, lived-in home now looked like an abandoned stage. The only props, 2 borrowed beach chairs in the center of the bare floor. What happened here? She whispered. Have a seat. I gestured calmly. Emily sat, but her eyes kept darting around the room. Her hair was loose, falling over the blue blouse I'd bought her last Christmas. That detail almost made me laugh, almost. Ryan, where are our things? She asked, her voice cracking. I reached into my jacket and handed her an envelope. Your things are all here. Inside, she found a key and a neatly typed 3-page inventory. It's a self-storage unit on Riverside. 6 months prepaid. Everything that was demonstrably yours is there. She blinked at the papers, struggling to form words. But what about the rest? Our furniture, our TV, our... Emily. I leaned forward. Can you explain why you lied about where you were these past weeks? Her lips parted, but she hesitated. I told you. I was staying at Sarah's. Lie number 1. I interrupted. Sarah messaged me last week. You weren't there. Try again. Her face turned crimson. Let me help you. I continued, my tone steady, almost surgical. The Driscoll Hotel. Executive Suite. Booked under Marcus Chen's name. $350 a night. Room service. Spa charges. Wanting to keep going, Emily buried her face in her hands. Ryan, I'm so sorry. I made a terrible mistake. I can explain everything. Explain why you lied. I asked coldly. Explain why you didn't have the decency to end things before throwing yourself into your ex's arms. Explain why Marcus knew details about this house only someone intimate would know. Silence. I leaned back. I get it now. You two reconnected long before you asked for this so-called break. You wanted to test if the spark was still there. But instead of honesty, you spun a story that kept me here as your safety net. If it worked with him, you'd vanish. If it didn't, you'd come back here like nothing happened. Finally, she lifted her tear-stained face. What if I say I realized I made a mistake? That I want to come back? That you're who I truly love? For the first time in weeks, I laughed. A real laugh. Emily, look around you. What do you see? She glanced helplessly at the bare walls. An empty house. Exactly. You know why it's empty? Because I sold it. We closed last Friday. The keys were handed over this morning. Her jaw dropped. You sold our house. Correct. My house. The one I bought with my money 2 years before I even met you. And with the profit, I've already put down a deposit on a property in Denver. I'm moving next week. She jumped to her feet, panic flooding her eyes. Ryan, you can't do this. We can talk. We can fix this. Fix this. I stood too, towering over her. Emily, you had 5 years to be sure about us. You had a whole year of engagement to be sure about marriage. But it only took you 2 weeks with your ex to decide you wanted to throw it all away. But I came back, she pleaded. I'm here. You came back because Marcus didn't give you what you expected. Because you realized a hotel fling doesn't replace real stability. You came back because your plan B failed. Her tears turned into full sobs. Please, it can't end like this. I walked over, gently wiping a single tear from her cheek, the last kindness I would ever offer her. It can. And do you know why? Because you taught me something. Her voice cracked. What lesson? That when someone asks for time to think about you, they've already decided. They're just looking for a softer landing. I picked up my jacket and moved toward the door. You have 1 hour to grab anything you left. After that, drop the keys in the mailbox. The new owners move in tomorrow. Ryan, wait, she cried. I paused at the doorway, but didn't turn around. Emily, you wanted freedom to explore your feelings. You got it. Now I get the freedom to explore a life without someone who isn't sure about me. I walked out, got in my car, and drove away. In the rearview mirror, she stood in the doorway, crying. For a moment, I felt a pang of sadness, but no regret. 3 months later, Denver. I was building my own consulting business, and it was growing faster than I'd imagined. I'd met new people. I was rediscovering myself, this time without second-guessing someone else's feelings. Emily emailed me 3 times. The first, desperate, begging for a second chance. The second, furious, calling me cold and cruel. The third, quieter, simply saying she understood and wishing me happiness. Through mutual friends, I later heard that she and Marcus had ended things 6 weeks after I left. Turns out, when the champagne wore off and the hotel suite became routine, there wasn't much left to hold them together. Who knew? But the truth is, it didn't matter anymore. The most important lesson I carried with me was this. Sometimes the best response to someone who isn't sure about you is to prove, without hesitation, that you are sure you deserve better.